Are you majoring in chemistry or a related STEM field and trying to decide whether to apply to grad school this fall? If so, this video is for you. Hi, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jennifer Lacer. I'm a chemistry professor at the University of Pittsburgh, and today I'd like to talk about some of the things that you might want to consider as you decide whether or not to apply to graduate school. I'm going to focus mostly on graduate school in chemistry, but many of these points will apply to other fields in the physical and biological sciences as well. Before I talk about the things you might want to consider in your decision about whether to go to grad school, I'd like to talk just a little bit about what grad school in chemistry is. I think that this is a really important place to start because grad school is pretty different from undergrad, and you should have a solid idea of what it is that you're actually making a decision about. So in an undergraduate degree, you're probably spending most of your time taking lecture courses, and you probably also take a small number of lab courses each semester to apply what you've learned in lecture. In grad school, on the other hand, the focus is really on doing research. You'll still take a few courses, and you'll probably also spend some of your time working as a teaching assistant, but most of your time will be spent on research. And that research is really more like a job than like school, and yes, you do get paid for it. But because research makes up such a big chunk of what you do in grad school, I think it's really important to understand what doing research in graduate school really means. First, it's important to realize that research in grad school is very different from taking a lab class. In undergraduate lab classes, you're typically given a set of procedures to follow, and there's a known result that you're working toward. In research, on the other hand, you're working on problems that haven't yet been solved, and sometimes even the methods and procedures that you need to solve them haven't yet been developed, so you'll have to kind of figure them out as part of your research project. Sometimes this is really exciting. You get to discover new things that nobody else in the world knows. But sometimes this can also be really frustrating because you might run into, lots of dead ends along the way. Second, even if you have some experience with undergraduate research, you may find that your experience in graduate school is different. Most undergraduate researchers receive a lot of direct guidance about what to do each day, kind of either from their advisor or a grad student mentor. As a grad student, however, you'll be expected to really take the lead on a project yourself, and you may find that that changes the way in which you experience the highs and lows of the research process. Again, sometimes this can be really exciting because any new discoveries are really yours. But sometimes it can also be frustrating since you won't necessarily have somebody to turn to tell you how to kind of fix stuff when it's not working. Most grad students will experience both sides of this coin, and it's useful to think about whether you're the kind of person for whom the highs are likely to make the lows worthwhile or not. So when it comes to deciding whether or not you should go to grad school, I think that one of the key questions you should ask yourself is whether you are excited about having research really be your focus. Do you love doing research and spending time in the lab? Do you find it rewarding to get to really deeply explore a topic and figure things out, even if there's some struggle along the way? If so, grad school is likely to be a really good fit for you. Another key question to ask yourself is, will a graduate degree help you get to where you want to be in your career? I highly recommend spending some time looking into this. There are some jobs for which you really will need a PhD. For example, if you have your heart set on teaching at the college level or leading research and development efforts in industry, you're almost certainly going to need a graduate degree to get there. If you primarily want to teach high school or mostly do bench work in industry, on the other hand, a graduate degree, and particularly a PhD, might not be necessary. These are just two examples, but I do recommend taking some time to research some of the career paths you're interested in, for example, by looking at job listings or using career resources from professional societies like the American Chemical Society, and see what kinds of qualifications are usually needed for the types of positions that appeal to you. So I think there are some really good reasons to decide to go to grad school in chemistry. If you really love doing research and digging deep in science, or if you know that a graduate degree is going to be important for your desired career path, grad school can be a really worthwhile and rewarding experience. I think that there are, however, some not so good reasons that students sometimes decide to go to grad school too, and if you recognize yourself in any of these questions, you might want to give the decision some more thought. First, are you considering going to grad school because it's kind of just the next thing to do? Often when we finish an undergraduate degree and are already comfortable with kind of being students, grad school can feel like it's just the logical next step. Sometimes this works out really well. Some students get to grad school and get involved in a research project and it just clicks and they have a great time. But sometimes if you don't already have a strong intrinsic motivation to pursue a graduate degree, it's a lot harder to feel like some of the frustrations and struggles of research are worth it, and that can make grad school a pretty miserable experience. Second, are you considering going to graduate school because you feel like your professors, your family, and/or your friends expect you to or tell you that you should? Students often face a lot of external pressures about their career paths, and whether it's pressure to pursue a career path so that they can get a good job, or whether it's pressure to keep going in a field just because they're talented at it, it can sometimes feel like you'll be letting other people down if you don't decide to go for it. And again, deciding to go to grad school just because other people expect it of you can be a really frustrating experience if you don't find that it kind of clicks for you along the way. So I really encourage you to take some time to ask yourself about what it is that you really want to do. Are you really personally motivated to pursue a graduate degree? If your answer is yes, if you would make that decision even if people didn't expect it of you, then go for it. But if the answer is no, you'd really rather be doing something else, then you don't have to let other people's expectations steamroll your wishes. It's your life. With all these things in mind, you might have a pretty clear idea about whether or not grad school is right for you. But you might also still be on the fence. And if so, that's totally okay. There's still time to figure it out. If you're on the fence, there are a couple of useful things that you can do to help figure out whether grad school is where you want to be. First, do more research. I mean this both literally and figuratively. In a literal sense, spending time in a research lab is the #1 way to figure out if a research environment and a research-based career is a good fit for you. There are lots of ways to get involved in undergraduate research, either through your school or through summer programs at other universities, and I really highly recommend pursuing these opportunities as early and as often as you can to figure out whether research is a good fit for you. In a figurative sense, though, it can also be really worth your time to do your research by doing informational interviews with your professors, with current grad students, and with people who are both in the types of positions that you might pursue if you do go to grad school, and the types of positions that you might pursue if you don't go to grad school. Ask them about the day-to-day of their jobs, what their prospects are in the next 5 to 10 years, whether they would change their decision about whether or not to go to grad school if they could do it over again, and so on and so forth. And then, after you talk with them, spend some time reflecting on whether what you've heard feels like something that would be a good fit for you. Informational interviews are an incredibly powerful tool when it comes to figuring out what you want to do. It's often hard to feel confident making a decision if you don't have enough information, so do what you need to do to go get that information. Informational interviews are a great way to do that. Second, you can also always delay your decision for a couple of years and take a year or two off to work. There's often a push to go to graduate school right away after you finish your undergraduate degree, and I think that there's kind of this sense that the longer you take off, the more that you'll get settled into life and having a paycheck and so on and so forth, and the harder it will be to uproot yourself again to go back to school. And that might be true to some extent. But at the same time, if you're on the fence, it can be really useful to get some first-hand experience in the types of jobs that you'll be competitive for without a graduate degree. And after a year or two, you'll have a much better sense of whether you're happy with those types of opportunities or whether you really want to push for something more. And of course, whichever decision you make, I think it's important to realize that it doesn't have to be permanent. Just as you can decide to apply to grad school after you work for a few years and decide that grad school is really what you want to be doing after all, you can also decide to leave grad school and apply for jobs if you start a graduate program and then decide that it's really not the right thing for you. Anyway, the point of this video is not to either talk you into or out of applying for graduate school, but to help you think about how to make an informed decision based on what you're interested in and where you want to go with your career. Grad school can be a really rewarding experience if you're enthusiastic and passionate about science, or if you have a clear goal motivating you to weather the highs and lows of obtaining your graduate degree. For me, for example, it was absolutely the right decision. But it's also something that's very individual for each person, and I hope that at least some of what I have said here is helpful to you in considering whether or not grad school is the right path for you. If you found this video useful, please give it a like and consider hitting the subscribe button. I'll be back with more advice soon. In the meantime, though, I'll drop a few useful links to things like the American Chemical Society's career guide and information about informational interviews in the description box below. And if you have any questions or comments about things that you'd like to see addressed in future videos, please leave me a comment and I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. Thanks very much and good luck.